tripling renewables by 2030, doubling energy efficiency. That's the way forward. Then, of course, we have to look at the issue of adaptation. It was too long underestimated in its relevance for those countries affected by climate change, specifically those who have the least means to adapt themselves. And certainly we have to find a solution for the loss and damage fund. We are ready to make a deal, and as I said, we need to look at the world as it is nowadays, and what we refuse to accept, we will accept a lot, but what we refuse to accept is that the biggest emitters puts itself in shoes of Ethiopia or other developing countries. That's not true, that's not fair. They are part of the disaster, and so they have to be part of the solution. We want to help those who are most affected, the most vulnerable countries, the SIDS, some of the African countries, to get prior access, preferred eligibility to the new fund, not excluding that there might be situations. Look at the situation in Pakistan, where the disaster was so big that everybody said, also we, of course, we have to help them. So it's not, we are not as strict, but there needs to be a focus. And then we have a preference for the World Bank as a host, but we are not strict, we are not missionaries on that, we are pragmatic, as I said earlier.
If I can quickly ask you to take that on as well, as we pass the baton from G20 to COP20.
Earth will survive, we will go extinct, and therefore there has to be a huge sense of urgency, and that huge sense of urgency must come in from G7 countries, and in terms of pushing for greater reforms of financing, there must be a technological leapfrogging, because if you're talking about tripling of renewable energy, it requires resources. If you're talking about moving into hard to abate sectors, it requires a huge amount of technological disruption. Without that, it will not happen. And therefore, technological disruption will have to play a very critical role to my mind. And I think more than anything else, and I entirely agree that if you're talking about 1.5 degrees centigrade at 2050, it will not happen. It will not happen without the developed countries taking leadership and saying that we are going to deliver it by 2040, including China. And these are, to my mind, the loss and damage also will have to be finalized but the roadmap for all this has been clearly laid out in terms of the finances required, etc., tripling of renewable energy. The roadmap for all that has already been laid out in G20, and therefore it will be far more easier for COP28 to push the pedal and accelerate the pace of implementation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kant, I will request you to take a seat here. We still need you for a bit.
Good evening, everyone. We gather here today to celebrate innovation, breakthrough technology, and solutions towards smarter and better towards a sustainable future. It is my absolute honor to introduce GIAP's initiative, ENTICE, Energy Transition Innovation Challenge, an initiative aimed at accelerating people-positive energy transition. I would now like to invite Mr. Saurabh Kumar, Vice President, GIAP India, to share.
This is a challenge that started about 6 months ago with our partners Dalberg. As Ravi mentioned in his speech, almost 400 people registered, 200 actual entries came up, and now is the time, the big day for us to honor the 4 awardees here. And to do the honors, may I request Mr. Amitabh Kant, G20 Sherpa, to come on stage, please. I would also like to request Mr. Amitabh Kant. We have 3 members of the jury panel here. Can I request them to also join on stage? Mr. Ravi Venkatesan, Anjali Bansal, and Mahua Acharya.
still the world goes to VF low tech. VF low tech.
I want to take from Infotech. As a panel member talking about, the renewable cost has come down drastically and more renewable energy are required. It is becoming highly unsustainable because they are intermittent. So there is a need for batteries that can store 4 to 6 hours and discharge for 8 to 10 hours. And we at Infotech are building competitive, cost-effective, long-duration energy storage solution. Thank you.
Hello, good evening all. Thank you and guys, and thank you GF for this wonderful opportunity. The path to decarbonization flows through renewables and grids which are rich with renewable. And we build software products which can enable faster and efficient integration of renewables into the grid. And through Entice, we are also going one step further, creating demand response which can further align energy consumption in line with renewables and thereby creating least cost energy transition. Thank you so much.
If the award for the most holistic solution goes to Ampere Hour.
Firstly, thank you so much, the Entice organizing team, GAP, sir, members of the jury. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a brief about Ampere Hour. We started Ampere Hour about 5 years ago with a mission to create or enable the creation of the 21st century flexible, resilient power grid. We work on building energy storage systems and energy management software that enables or builds that technology stack that is required to build this flexible grid of the future.
The most novel and promising solution award goes to Ampere.
Hi everyone, I'm Mahi and I'm happily Akshay. We are the co-founders at Campy. At Campy, we are transforming waste using our patented process into advanced nanomaterial that increases the life of the batteries and the energy efficiency, thus reducing the burden on the supply chain for the battery technology, hence making transition to energy greener and bigger. Thank you everyone.
No ORF event is complete without having a most fabulous conversation with you. And this particular one is something that you in a way are stewarding India as directions in the days ahead. And we are really grateful that despite having commitments this evening, you were able to find time and join us. So thank you very much, Minister, for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here to be with you.
Minister, I thought the first question I should ask you should be a big question. In a country that is perhaps the most dynamic of all economies in the last 2 years, the fastest growing large economy, energy plays a crucial role, very crucial role. As the minister in charge of a large portfolio of that energy, how is India sitting today? How well do you sleep at night?
Let me start by saying that this is not an India-specific comment I'm making, but if you want to look at or assess the economic performance of any country, just look at its energy situation and you get a reasonably good idea, not just because energy is the lifeline of any economy, but for other reasons also. So insofar as India is concerned, there is 2 or 3 self-evident points which I would like to submit in order to provoke a discussion. We consume, and since we are largely dependent on imports, most of it is imported, at least 80 to 85%. We consume 5 million barrels of crude oil in a day. That is the state of play today. No matter which way you look at the energy matrix, if you look at consumption, you look at growth and demand, you look at production, you look at the next, let's say, 2 decades. And this is not my figure, this is something that think tanks like yourselves, like yours, working in the energy sector in the Western world will tell you that between now and say 2045, 25% of that global demand or the increase in the global demand, 25% will come from India. Which in effect means that if you have a very high demand and consumption now, and you look at the entire ecosystem, whether you're looking at E&P, you are looking at energy transition, the whole lot, India is in many respects very central to the global energy scenario. I tell you with a sense of relief that we've been able to navigate the difficult times that we found ourselves placed in. I look at difficulty and challenge in 2 ways. One is the 3 points of the trilemma that we had to address. 1, ensuring availability. 2, ensuring affordability. And 3 is making the transition. Sources of supply from the hitherto 27 to about 39 now. And we are on the lookout for any place where energy availability is, and we have a very quick response time. We can tap that as well. Insofar as affordability is concerned, I think 2 points stand out in the last 530 days or so. Petrol prices here have not gone up. In fact, India is the only country in the world where petrol prices since I think April 2021 have come down 5%. The rate of increase in countries in India's neighborhood, I'm talking about South Asia, the increase was between 50 and 110% or something. If you look at the rest of the world, particularly the United States, etc., increase has been between 30 and 40%. And India came down 5% in petrol, and it came down 0.2% on diesel. Now you can say, what is the magic wand that you guys have which ensured that you were able to bring prices down? Very simple. On 2 occasions, the Honorable Prime Minister reduced the cess, the central government charges, if I remember correctly, November 2021 and May 2022, and cumulatively the prices of petrol and diesel came down by 13 rupees and 16 rupees. The BJP ruled states, fortunately, also reduced their VAT, whereas the non-BJP states, from where the maximum decibel level of Allah comes from, did not reduce their VAT. So we have this peculiar situation that in West Bengal, petrol retails 11 rupees 80 paisa more expensive than in a corresponding BJP ruled state. I've dealt with availability. I should have added that even when there were very severe floods in the northeast, our OMCs ensured that their people carried cylinders on their shoulders and made sure there was no shortage of anything. These days, I wake up in the morning, one of the things I'm looking at, like shortage. But if there is a shortage somewhere, it's due to a local, some problem arose in some place, etc. It's not a national problem. Now I come to transition, and here the story gets better. Because let's start with biofuels. The previous government, which was in office between 2004 and 14, tried their level best and I was part of that, so I can tell you with confidence. They wanted 5% biofuel blending in 10 of our states and union territories, not even the whole country. Small number. And with the best effort in the world, all that we could get by the end of May 2014, when the Modi government came in, was 1.4% biofuel blending. The Prime Minister set a target of 10% blending by November 2022, and the story in the public domain, everybody knows, we were able to do it 5 months in advance. That encouraged us to bring forward our target for 20% blending from 2030 to 2025, 5 years in advance. I'm very happy to tell you, we are today at 12% blending. Before I came here, I met one of our industry leaders, and I don't want to take names, but everybody knows whom I'm speaking to. And I told him at that stage, I said, what really encourages me is that when I meet people, you are already looking at the 3 steps ahead. This is the private sector. He was asking me, may I share this with him? He said, we got up to a very good beginning. What about feedstock going ahead? And I gave him an idea, and I think he agreed with me on that. Look, where there is sound planning, where there is goodwill, and where people are willing to address, now that you have a global biofuels alliance, wasn't easy by the way. Let me complete it. The transition today, no one who's in anyone amongst your industry specialists sitting here actually is going to doubt whether we can do 20% blending by 25. I don't think anybody's doubting that. Today the question is, and people are putting their money into it, 20% से आगे कितना जाएंगे और कब तक जाएंगे? So transition here, compressed biogas, same thing. Green hydrogen, and I stress that it's a story which is still just waiting to hit the public domain. Again, another company, I'm not going to name them, came to me with their collaboration partners a couple of months ago. And they said, we are on the verge of signing a major MOU or agreement with them. I said, Kitna? When he told me, I also nearly fell off my chair. He said, sir, we will be producing 5 million metric tons per annum. So I said, wait a minute. It can't be all green hydrogen. He said, no, 4 is green ammonia, the rest is hydrogen. But this is one this thing. I'm not getting into what the others are doing. Look, green hydrogen lends itself for success only in countries where in one place you have massive demand, where you have the capacity to produce, and where the proximity of the production center and the consumption center are in closed listing. And I think the green hydrogen is the wave, is the fuel of the future. It will succeed in the United States, it will succeed in India, it will succeed in some other large consumption country. Indian company to Unipar in Germany, to Singapore for the new GE electricity car. So I very quickly cover all 3: availability, affordability, and transition.
No, but I want to look at the transition in 2 questions there. So let me ask you the first one. You said very critically it wasn't easy on the biofuel alliance.
20%. I had opposition from the 20% target we had set, but the 20% target was set for 2030, not for 2025. My friend here will tell you where was the opposition coming from. A lot of people had got used to the idea of 20% being a futuristic thing. They were doing quite well now. Even the Automobile Manufacturers Association said, no, this is very unrealistic. So I said, wait a minute. No, the engines will not be able to take the, first there was a gripe at 20%, then people produced studies to show that up to 20% blending does not require any major alteration in the engine. But I asked a simple question. I used to be ambassador to Brazil. All the guys who are manufacturing cars and selling them in India, they also sell there. How is it that you can go to a bunk in Brazil and depending on the price of petrol and ethanol of that day, you can adjust your engine to buy whether you want to buy 45% ethanol and 55% petrol or the other way around? Now, if that can be done there, so opposition slowly started going away. But look, I'm not holding, maybe it's a mindset issue. But today when I was talking with one of your industry captain, they're saying कि उन्होंने ये कहा, उसने ये कहा, there's a press reports को छोड़ दो. Once you are embarking on a journey saying we are serious about biofuel, then I tell you why we are serious about biofuel. I just discovered that the baloney that I used to be taught earlier when I was a young diplomat, कि अगर आप biofuels में जाएंगे तो आप food security जो है ना वो खत्म हो जाएगी. अरे भाई फूड सिक्योरिटी किसने बोला तुम अपना बासमती राइस लगाओ उसमें, किसने बोला कि अपना बोला you can make ethanol from a variety of feedstock. When we had some problem recently, we moved to maize, and our maize ethanol made from maize went up how many times? 15 times. Suddenly in a short period of time, and a lot of states which produce it. Look, today when we did 10% blending of ethanol, on that particular time, given the price of petrol in the market, we saved 41,000 crores. And that 41,000 crores we were able to utilize to pay our farmers 42,400 crores. Now, if you are taking this now from 10%, we go to 12%, 12%, we go to 20%, and your consumption is going up. The total amount of petrol that you are consuming is going up. We need 1,000 crore liters of ethanol for 20% blending. We're going to get it. We're already at 600 crore liters. But I'm saying something else. I am convinced that ethanol actually is a very good support system to your agricultural economy also. In Panipat, you are making ethanol from parali, from agricultural waste. You've got plants coming up on bamboo. So, you must have the confidence that you will have judicious decision making, and you have that in evidence now with the kind of government the Honorable Prime Minister is leading. You take rational choices. Now, if for instance, some commodity suddenly because of global shortages, something happens and exports start, you have that flexibility of adjusting it. But if you have multiple feeds, it's only a question of discovering some of them. And we were able to do it without any effort. When this problem came up in the case of, what was it, rice. I mean, I must say my colleagues, the civil servants were a little worked up. ये क्या होगा, how will you meet it up? कुछ भी नहीं होगा. एक में नहीं होता, दूसरा दरवाजा खुल गया. I think we raised the price of maize marginally, etc. And now 15 times it's gone up. No, nobody's even looking at it. I was talking to some very enlightened people in the government, and they were telling me, he said, you are now produced an ecosystem where earlier said, no, I will not set up an ethanol plant unless I have a buyback guarantee. Today nobody is asking that question. Today they know that ethanol and biofuels are going to be encouraged. You produce it, you have a global biofuels alliance. You are now also entering another dimension where both the domestic market and the international market can invest fuse. And the biofuels alliance, by the way, I am not going to answer a question before it's asked. It's not just an intergovernmental level. It is a multi-stakeholder. Industry will be a stakeholder. I'm saying it in public. And we will encourage, like Unica in Brazil, major cooperative on ethanol production, our industry people to be stakeholders in that. And there's nothing like that sharing of experience which will produce the desired approach and success.
No, but what is truly the purpose of this alliance when you are largely looking at using your own produce to make your own ethanol? Why do you need a global alliance? Is it just for sharing best practices, know-how?
You come from a think tank which thinks big. We are only 3% of the global market. Abhi the market in ethanol is only about $92 billion. It's going to go up to $162 billion in 2 years. But you are potentially looking at a $500 billion. Why shouldn't I expect people who've already become billionaires to become even bigger?
On the same transition issue that you had raised, green hydrogen, again huge potential, and you mentioned proximity of production and consumption as being one of the drivers and definers of hydrogen. How do you look at what's happening around the world, especially, let me ask you, let me be a little provocative, this Make America Great Again, now it is called Inflation Reduction Act. Discretionary potential in terms of hydrogen pricing and subsidies and incentives. How do you view that as an energy minister who is trying to catalyze your own ecosystem?
In the interest of full disclosure, I look around this room, very many eminent people, but I've probably known Samir longer than most people here. I was Secretary Economic Relations. He walked into my room one day and he said कि मुझे चाहिए मैं कुछ करने वाला हूँ. For some reason, I don't know, Secretary Economic Relations. I came back and I told him, हाँ ठीक है हो गया है, but you would ask for what? Some small figure, 23 lakhs or something.
You doubled.
I just doubled. I said, करो अच्छी तरह से. So I told him, now what is it that we are looking at here? Yeah? You want to provoke me to say that the Americans have a play with words that when they put in $500-600 billion, they are calling it an Inflation Reduction Act. I'm not going to respond to that. All I'm saying is, you are spending $600 billion or whatever the amount is to produce more green hydrogen. More strength to your elbow. I hope my companies in India will take advantage of that inflation reduction. I have a very different approach in all that. And I'm telling you they will. I mean, my first exposure to green hydrogen came when? I was a few days old as Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas. And I had a, what is called, virtual meeting with the American Secretary, US Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Greenhalgh. And she said, Minister, I'm very happy we are meeting. I have an objective which is what? 1 for 1 for 1. 1 kilo of green hydrogen for $1 for 10 years. Next day I heard one of our industry giants make the same thing. Suddenly my mind went on to, I became Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister, I think in July of 2021. Then comes August 15, 2021, and lo and behold, our Honorable Prime Minister says from the ramparts of the Red Fort, addressing the nation, that we are going to take up green hydrogen in mission mode. He said that. After that, for a few months, everybody would come to me, अरे यार green hydrogen, PM ने बहुत कुछ हो नहीं रहा. मैंने कहा ये जो कह रहे हैं कुछ हो नहीं रहा is a load of, just give it time. What did we do? We did two things. You had a decision in which, a cabinet decision in which the responsibility for green hydrogen is something which is not one ministry is going to deal with. My ministry, I keep telling R.K. Singh, I don't know whether he likes it or not, I said green hydrogen will succeed because my refiners will make it in their refineries. But there are other people in the steel industry, so we had 6 centers in the government or ministries which were going to deal with it. But we did one thing more. We announced an amount of 19,700 crores for the PLI scheme to cover the manufacture of electrolyzers. Now I think it's a very big thing. Today, what do you need to make green hydrogen? I'm very clear. Correct me. You need to bring down the cost of green energy or solar energy. We've already demonstrated that we can bring it down from 25 cents a unit to 3 cents. And you need electrolyzers. Now, as far as I know, every known electrolyzer manufacturer in the world is either here or is in collaboration with company. And if some are left, I'm going to Germany in a couple of days' time. Well, I certainly talk to them. But I think they want to come here, not because you have a German connection, It's not because of that. They will come here because there's an economic opportunity here. And this is the way I have always said, good projects don't get held back because of lot of resources, lack of resources. I have said this now for 30 years. You give me a good project which is bankable, money will find its way because money is also looking for resources, are also looking for good projects. And green hydrogen is just one of those projects. If you look at what is happening in the private sector, government has done the ecosystem. That PLI scheme for...
In fact, on the private sector, it is asking, sir. In fact, private and public, I'm not going to take both of them together. You are a ministry that has fostered some of the most efficient public sector undertakings as well in the past. I can see this time because I'm being polite, sir. Some of them are...
I don't want to interrupt you. One of those guys, I got off the plane yesterday, I saw the results of one of the companies. And I couldn't resist myself. I called the CMD of that company. I won't name it because पता लगेगा आपको. मैंने कहा बहुत, हमें बहुत दुख हुआ कि आपके इस क्वार्टर का profit is how much? Only 12,000 crores, 14,000 crores. I said, which means your half yearly return is about 27,000 crores. Profits, which means you'll be ending the year with what, 54,000 crores. I said, we are a 7,000-year-old civilization. Promise me, with these returns for 1 year, you will not whine. No, this is real. I'm telling you. And then this is one, another one is coming out, When I became minister, there was talk, BPCL ko disinvest kar do, ye kar do, wo kar do. I just saw the BPCL result. Last quarter was 8,000 crores. So these are OMCs and your private sector, by the way. I don't want to say anything. Everybody is enjoying themselves. But the country benefits from that. If the private sector grows and the public sector grows, it means the country is growing.
No, but that's a more specific question. Everyone is making money because of the opportunities of economic growth that India is offering everywhere. But are they nimble enough to seize these opportunities such as women? Are you seeing the responsiveness in the market players?
They're not just seeing the opportunities, they're acting on the opportunity. I would be worried if, say, government announces a 19,700 crore PLI scheme, and I would be very worried if there are no people coming and applying for it. I don't ever hear that. Today, when I was talking to one of your friends here, another MP came in, and he told me something he's doing as shocked. He's an MP and a thing. क्या कर रहा था biodiesel का? I was aware of it. You see, the thing is you are as a government required to set up an ecosystem. Once you set up the right ecosystem and the right messaging goes down, you don't have to do hand-holding, they do it themselves. And today, the fact of the matter is, there are very few countries like India. Bold decision making, you need to make sure that you are unleashing the productive forces. Unfortunately, our opposition parties are not seeing that. They are getting caught in किसी ने अलर्ट भेजा, किसी ने कहा तो 150 कंट्रीज में गया, so I was MP sitting with me, is one of our MPs, very vocal one. कहते हैं मेरे को भी आया, मैंने कहा why don't you go on TV and say that this is not targeted at Auntie X or Uncle Y, this is coming, it's some general alert. So I am basically saying that today, and I say this with confidence, with this kind of leadership, with the kind of decisions they are taking, with the kind of look at civil aviation. I was civil aviation minister. Today you are crossing 5 lakh passengers in a day in civil aviation. And everybody's civil aviation is collapsing. Your airlines are ordering 1,000 planes plus. Why? Because you were able to privatize Air India in time.
And what about the, so by the way, that alert even I got, but I thought it was going to everyone. So, and that alert,
You also got it, huh?
but I thought it was going
But you are one of our friends, why would we as a government want to target you?
You tell me, sir.
मेरे MP को करें. Now I don't look at the phone. I may have got a signal like that. I don't know. These guys are nuts. No nuts. कोई मौका मिलता है तो फिर किसी ने बोले सोरोस का क्या? अरे सोरोस ने किया, जिसने भी किया, why do you have this? I couldn't resist getting that one in.
So on the issue of transition itself, so the public sector, private sector, government ecosystem are all aligned for the objectives that we've set ourselves. Now let's look at the broader energy transitions, the 2070 net zero, the 2047 developed country status. When we move to that framework, how do you see India progressing? How do you assess our performance over the last 5 to 7 years since the Paris Agreement, let's say in 2015? So how are we doing on that, on the larger net zero objective?
First of all, I had the privilege of spending 39 years in the foreign service before I had 39 years in the foreign service, 6 years doing what you do, think tanking at the international level. And now I've been a minister for 6 years and 3 months. We have to be very careful about definitions. The Prime Minister, in all his assessments, is a very cautious person. When he says that India will be net zero by 2070, he set a target which is both a target towards which you work, and there's no question of arguing short. When he says 2047 को विकसित देश बनना है, I am going to make 2 submissions to you on the 2070 net zero target and this 2047. Let me start with 2047. I know from the time I was in the UN and I know now, that the only agreed definition of what is a...
To those who did not get the Hindi part of it, the Prime Minister has made a challenge for India to be a developed nation by 2047. That's the target.
That's a target. Now, is there a definition of what is a developed country? I'm not aware of it, but you go by broad indices that your this sector, that sector, etc. will be But there is a definition for what is called a least developed country, and we looked it up. There are 46 out of them out of 193 member states of the UN. What will be our economy by 2040 according to the single? According to Ernst & Young, by 2040 you should get $26 trillion economy. Now tell me, with a $5 trillion economy by 2025, you're already feeling good. If that $5 trillion economy gets multiplied 5 times, your per capita income also goes up. I don't know what the definition is, but my submission to you, sir, is that we are going to be a developed country by current levels of, what is the developed country much before that. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you've got countries with a GDP of 2.7%, 2.7 trillion, calling themselves very good restaurants and all that. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the GDP and the heft, you will be way ahead of that.
I want to finally ask you, sir, and I'm not being provocative here. We spoke at the beginning that we require a new trade and financial architecture. The Sherpa was here, Mr. Amitabh Kant was here. We require a new financial architecture. How are we going to bring the South countries, who may not have the same resources of a country such as ours, which is $5 trillion or $4.5 trillion growing at a certain rate? How do we bring them together? How do we bring them on this ride of transitions, of new fuels, of cleaner living?
So what I like about Samir, he asks his own question and then he answers it himself, and then he wants me to comment. There are two things. Let's be very clear. Global architecture, you mean the multilateral system. Mr. Saran, that was devised in 1945 when the Second World War was still going on. And again, I don't want to say anything because I served that system for 39 years. No one in the world today is going to tell you that the multilateral system is in good shape. And I'll give you 2 examples. The one designated agency which has the authority to determine whether there is a threat to international peace and security is the UN Security Council. You ask yourself a simple question, where all in the world are wars taking place? And you'll find many such places. Did any of them before declaring war go to the UN Security Council? They didn't even make a reference to it, number one. Number two, the Security Council has been paralyzed since the permanent members found themselves on opposite sides of the fence in the Libya and Syria. I was presiding over the Security Council. It has continued to remain paralyzed. I'm making a very broad statement. So if the one agency which is responsible for making a determination, because once it makes a determination there is a threat to peace and security, it alone has the authority to authorize all means necessary within quotes, which means military force. Security Council is out of this thing. Now I come to the other part. What are the pillars of the multilateral system? Peace and security, development, all that. When the world financial and economic crisis took place, and you and I are part of that story, there was a meeting of finance ministers, I think in Sao Paulo in Brazil. Those are 6, 7. Something like that, 7, 8, whatever. And everybody said, and what was the world financial and economic crisis? It arose out of this subprime lending sector in the US
2008, that's right.
Real estate market, 2008, exactly. Because after that I came to Delhi.
Correct.
Now, they didn't know what to do. Why? Why didn't they know? They didn't think the UN could deal with it. ECOSOC is a talk shop, they couldn't deal with it. Then what else could they do? IMF, World Bank, those were the other 2 parts of the multilateral system set up in the Bretton Woods, that beautiful place in Hampshire, Bretton Woods. And then you had the Havana conference. They were non-functional. WTO was not something. So what did they do? Knee-jerk response, which in retrospect was a good one. they decided to elevate the G20, which was meeting at finance minister level, and decided to make it a summit level group of heads of state and government. Hence was born the G20. Now, if anyone who knows these two facts, the G20's genesis and the, what's it called, the, Security Council paralysis, is not going to say that the multilateral system is healthy. It isn't. So you need to develop something more. That's why you need bright guys like Amitabh and others. With you, we sit down one evening, have a spiritual discussion, and find out what is it that you can do to architecturalize. I'm using a word I just made up.
Okay.
The concept of how the new world should look. There are provisions. Find it in the pricing which is coming from different quarters. Okay, there is some concern. There is concern that today, because of the geopolitical uncertainty, it is concern. It's nothing more than that. Involved in this will realize what is at stake, and in the process, they will ensure that. So, what they will do, hopefully, ensure that the situation is not exacerbated. If you ask for my view, I am obviously, we are monitoring the availability very carefully. We are diversifying our energy sources. It's always good news when more energy comes onto the market. And if you ask me what is my overall assessment, I'll say fingers crossed, but I think we will be able to navigate in the journey ahead as we have been able to navigate in the past.
Is India looking towards Latin America for the fuel supply?
No, we have already buying from 39 countries. So if let's say more energy comes on source in one particular part of the world, obviously India, today we are the, I think, third largest consumer in the world. Yes. And obviously a country which is consuming 5 million barrels of crude oil in a day will obviously look at where, and Venezuela is a country where we had actually some payments stuck when the American sanctions came on. So I have, like you, looked at the global situation. Our ambassador designate to Caracas, he was with me today, and he'll be joining shortly. And one of the things I told him is to, look around, see what's happening. By the way, Venezuela has the largest reserves in the world. So if Venezuela, I don't know what the terms of it are, whether for 6 months or whatever it is, if Venezuela comes on the market, it should have a sobering effect on all the others who are trying to see. And our refineries have been using Venezuelan oil. I think we are Paradeep, right?
Yes. Yes, sir. Paradeep and Reliance.
आपको सिर्फ आपके साथ यही शेयर कर रहा था ना, हमने टोटल फ्रीडम दी हुई है जी सर। आप इस समय बायोफ्यूल्स या कंप्रेस बायोगैस की हमारे तरफ से टोटल इंकरेजमेंट है। हमने टारगेट इसलिए रखा था क्योंकि टारगेट सरकार की तरफ से मैंडेट और टारगेट बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, क्योंकि वो नहीं होंगे तो जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं स्टेक होल्डर सिस्टम में, दे मे नॉट इवन टेक इट सीरियसली। अभी हमने टारगेट रखा था 10% ब्लेंडिंग का नवंबर 2022 तक, वो हमने 5 महीने पहले पूरा किया। फिर जो 2030 का टारगेट था 20% ब्लेंडिंग का, वो हम उसको 5 साल और आगे ले आए हैं। अभी हमारी 12% टारगेट था एंड ऑफ अक्टूबर, वी हैव मेट दैट। और मुझे पूरी उम्मीद है कि आने वाले समय में 2025 के एंड तक वो हमारा जो 20% ब्लेंडिंग टारगेट है वो हो जाएगा। उसके आगे मैंने जो बात की है, दैट वाज मोर loud thinking from my side. I said that 20% target was set essentially because we were not that sure whether the amount of ethanol that was required for 20% blending, whether that would be available. और मैंने ये भी कहा कि 1000 करोड़ लीटर हमें 20% ब्लेंडिंग के लिए चाहिए, जिसमें हमारी 12% जो ब्लेंडिंग हो रही है उससे 600 करोड़ लीटर ऑलरेडी मिल रहा है। और जो आने वाले समय है जिसमें राइस से, शुगर से, अब हमने मक्का भी ऐड कर दिया, मक्का में द ग्रोथ हैज बीन 15 गुना समथिंग लाइक दैट। ओके, सो वी आर वेरी कॉन्फिडेंट। और अभी एक इंडस्ट्रियल वन ऑफ द वेरी कैप्टन्स इन दैट एरिया हैज कम टू मी, आई सेड लिसन, आई गिव हिम सम सजेशंस, ही सेड यस यू आर एब्सोल्युटली राइट। लीजिए कि हमें बाय बैक गारंटी मिल जाए, अब कोई उसके बारे में चिंता ही नहीं करता। उनको ये पक्का है कि सरकार की नीति है, लोग बना रहे हैं और ये कंजम्पशन यहाँ पे भी यूज होगी। और बाय द वे बायोफ्यूल्स अलायंस भी बन गई है। जो हमारे फिगर्स हैं, हमारी $92 बिलियन के बायोफ्यूल्स मार्केट है, 1-2 साल में 190 बिलियन जाने वाली है। और मैं अपने फिगर्स में तो यही यूज कर रहा हूँ कि $500 बिलियन से ज्यादा की मार्केट है 530 दिन में, 6 अप्रैल 2022 एग्जैक्टली, दैट्स द पीरियड। और द अदर थिंग इज दैट इन दैट पीरियड, रेफरेंस पीरियड विच वी यूज, दुनिया भर में दाम बढ़ रहे थे, हमारा पेट्रोल का दाम 5% नीचे आया। And by and large, we are maintaining that. So on all fronts, availability, affordability and sustainability, we are doing well. बाकी आगे चल के one cannot say, आप पूछ रही थी अभी कि जियोपॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन क्या है और क्या होगा। मान लीजिए कल अगर स्थिति बदल जाती है, I am not sure that we will be in a position to do that, but we are so far been able to navigate.